Yeah, yeah. Making her way to the mic. They start dimming the lights. You start feeling alright. From Birmingham, home of the Teddy Longs, and the room is stutters. More once you discover. For all of the lovers, Whitney Houston and Roman Reigns. For all of the lovers, and Mickey James and Marvin Gaye. For all of the lovers, and Sasha Banks, Janelle Monáe, Silk, Sonic, and Paige. Allow me to say, look, I just found a place, sweet escape. Every one of us, I was kinda late, 'cause I just made it off the struggle bus. Walking by the fate, 'cause I know it's right in front of us. Yo, I ain't with the hate, gotta focus on what's great. Ladies and gentlemen, Steph Hardy is on the air. Had to drop a couple bars just to make you all aware. So, sit back, relax, enjoy the show. You know I go by Joe or the rest of the flow, yeah.
Hey y'all, welcome to a new episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast Live with your girl Stephanie Hardy, host and creator of this fabulous platform, contributing writer for Daily DDT, and color commentator featured in various places. But today I am not alone. I have a special guest with me, someone who I am so happy to have on my show. His name is Stanley Karr. He is the host of Wrestling with Heart with Stanley Karr, as well as a community service active person and just an all-around philanthropist. So Stanley, welcome to the show.
Hey, good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Of course, I love your work, but we're going to get started by asking you, when did you fall in love with wrestling?
I had always been a fan of professional wrestling, dating back to when I was about maybe 4 or 5 years old. I remember one night my dad was sitting in front of the TV, and we've always bonded together. So one night he was watching Monday Night Raw, and I just asked him out of the blue. I just said, "What are you watching?" He goes, "I'm watching wrestling." So on the TV, I see this larger than life, jacked up dude with sunglasses, Hawaiian t-shirt, and black pants, none other than The Rock, right? This larger than life guy, charismatic, and just got the crowd behind him. I was like, wow, this guy's awesome. This guy's cool. So this was right around the tail end of the Attitude Era. I remember Stone Cold was out with an injury. I think he hurt his neck at the time. So Triple H was like the top heel, and I think Rock was wrestling him at WrestleMania. They did like the McMahon in every corner, like the Fatal 4-Way. And yeah, I was hooked right then and there. I loved it. I kind of took a break from it for a little bit for a few years, regretfully. I missed out on some really good stuff, but I'm very lucky that I was able to catch a good part of the Ruthless Aggression era. So I consider that to this day like my favorite era of all time in pro wrestling.
Yeah, the Ruthless Aggression era is actually one of my favorite eras too, because like you, I sort of came in almost at the tail end of the Monday Night War Attitude Era vibes. So that was interesting, except mine was sort of centered on WCW because my dad was watching both of them back and forth, taping them. It was a wild time to be into wrestling at that point as a child, and you're just being exposed to these people fighting. It's just really insane.
I remember when I was maybe about 6 years old, about a year after I started watching, I used to go to the toy stores all the time, whether it was Toys R Us or KB Toys, and I would see like the action figures like just on display. You'd ever
Hmm.
go to a toy store, you'd see like The Rock or Stone Cold or Triple H. Their figures would be on the wall. And they also had like the rings too, like the play rings. I used to get a bunch of those. And they had the Titantron set, the play sets. I loved going there every single time. It was like paradise. And just before WCW closed, I actually bought a Goldberg figure.
Oh,
And
cool.
so that was like the only WCW figure I had in my collection. And it was like he had like on the back it said Fear the Spear. So it's amazing, I'd never thought that WCW would get bought out, and here we are 20 some years later.
Yeah, see, funny enough, I didn't even know WCW got bought out because my dream was to be a Nitro girl growing up because I all I wanted to do was just dance with them every time I saw them on TV. There isn't footage of it, sadly, but I would always dance every time I saw them. And then I think as a child, life changes started to happen. And I think a little bit later, I found out that they got bought out, and I was like, what? So that's what happened to them? All I knew was that they just disappeared. So finding out that they got bought out was just the most insane thing. But hey, I mean, that's just how business goes. But it's okay. Wrestling is still very much present. And I'm so happy that you were able to get those and have those amazing memories with those action figures and those toys. Like, even going to the toy section now is therapeutic for the soul, I find.
Yeah, I mean, with nowadays when you have like all the collectibles and you got all these different stores now with like the Funkos, I think they're called now, like the pop dolls.
Yes.
I mean, it's like taking on like a life of its own. New generations are really getting into it, so it's really cool to see like the evolution of pop culture.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love it. And then you get to, and the thing about being an adult is it's like you're making your money, but then you go back and buy all the things that you either wish you had or did have at one point in your childhood. And I think that's
Yeah,
just really funny how you can, how it just turns around and it's full circle that way.
it
So
is.
it's cool.
Hmm.
Um, but just to get back to you in the center of you, since you've been into wrestling and how you've shared all of your childhood memories and how you got into it with your father, so when did you decide that you wanted to start using your voice? Because you aren't just a wrestling podcaster, you have also done work in radio, I see. So when did you decide that that was sort of like your life's calling?
So I think I always knew, like right around then, when I was a little kid, like I always wanted to get involved in entertainment. So I, when I was a student at the college where I'm currently working at, behind me here, I found out that the school needed a radio program, had a radio program, and I wanted to get involved. You know, I always loved listening to music growing up. I felt like I had a knack for trivia. So about music and movies and different pop culture references. And I started doing weekly radio shows every Monday, Monday afternoon, and that's when I got started with it. And I later started doing shows later during the week, and I also started up a community radio show that I do on a local low power FM station in the Nashville, Tennessee area called The Piano Men, which is a show on piano players in all genres of music. I've interviewed so many people like Jim Brickman, if you're familiar with him, or John Tesh, who wrote the Round Ball Rock theme for the NBA basketball seasons on NBC. Also got to interview a guy by the name of Michael Omardian, who helped Christopher Cross get his start, worked with Steely Dan back in the day as well. And a guy by the name of David Sanchez, who was one of the original members of Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band. So
Wow.
I wanted to do as much as I could to really get experience. And once I knew at first that I loved radio and wanted to do it, I just knew right away I found my calling. And so, coming up on almost 10 years, uh, still doing it, and it's having a blast.
Yeah, it sounds like you are having a blast with a lot of the people that you have interviewed. Like that's like a who's who in terms of, piano music and also just, music as a whole. And I'm glad that you were able to do that even in your own college community. That's great.
Hmm.
I find that radio, in this day and age, because of streaming and so many and podcasting and so many other media outlets, it's like radio becomes more and more underappreciated, but at the same time, it's something that we should still try to hold on to because locally, it's one of the mediums that people, know about things in their community and are exposed to things. And everybody probably isn't open to all of the other, technological advances that have been made, with audio work. So I do still appreciate radio for me, and just knowing that, I've had great memories when it comes to radio too. And it's also inspired me in my podcasting career as well. So I think that's amazing that you were able to do that, in your college campus, and even pay it forward. Coming back to the place where you learned and just still doing stuff like that. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we all there's nothing like, engaging with people and having that conversation with a friend or whoever you're around. And so we all need to find ways to get our information, different ways to get information. And radio, I feel like, is a powerful medium, can be used as such a powerful medium to get information. People want to know what's going on in their community, going on in the world. So we want to be there for them. And that's what we want to do in radio.
Yeah, absolutely. And even this year, one of the best things that I was able to do this year was be on a radio station here in Birmingham. It's Talk 99.5. And I got to do it through a friend who is the organizer of a nonprofit here. And just doing it, and just being on the radio was such a dream come true. Like right at a station where I've listened to different stations that they've had. And it was just such a cool and relaxing experience. And then to have people calling in and asking questions about wrestling and what I do. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life. And just telling
Yeah.
my family, I'm going to be on the radio. Like, it was just like, that was something I always imagined for myself, but didn't really think that it could happen. So when it did, it was just such an amazing opportunity. So I think that radio is something that should be, cultivated and appreciated a whole lot more. And then there's people like you who continue to work in it, and so many others. And it'll just continue to grow from there, as the desire is still present for it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a very powerful medium, useful tool, and people love hearing their favorite personalities and as well as the music. So I think it'll be something that'll continue to be around in the years to come.
Absolutely. So when it comes to you and your career, also, in radio and being a wrestling fan, when did you decide to combine both mediums for yourself and actually, create your show Wrestling with Heart, and, create whatever it is that you decided to do in wrestling, as a whole? And did you face any obstacles?
Well, as someone that's been working at the community college for about now going on 4 years, I decided to take a class on podcasting just for fun. I graduated from the college in 2017, got my bachelor's degree in 2021 at a college in New York. So I took this class on podcasting, and I had actually went to my first Mania in Dallas, Texas. And that was where Stone Cold Steve Austin wrestled for the first time in like almost 20 years, faced Kevin Owens. And then I actually attended SummerSlam right in my hometown of Nashville. So about a month after that, I started taking this class. And, me doing the music stuff for so long, I was like, I kind of want to do something a little different, because people know me as the music guy. I've done Piano Man and I've done music shows. I said, what if I use this class to start doing a wrestling podcast? And me being a wrestling connoisseur, wrestling fan all my life, I've listened to several different wrestling podcasts. And I said to myself, if I'm going to do a wrestling podcast, I got to do something that's different, something that nobody's really ever done before, because there's so many podcasts, as you know, on wrestling. Everywhere you look, there's a wrestling podcast. So I had to think of something that nobody's really touched on. And to my knowledge, nobody really ever talked about giving back to your community or doing things like charity work or doing something good for others. And you always hear so much about the negative side of wrestling, like the dark side of the rings and people dying, drug abuse, all these other horrible stories. And not really many podcasts. I mean, there may be a couple out there, but not really a lot of podcasts that really show the positive side, and especially the stuff that they do in their communities, charity work and volunteering, giving back, community service. And that's something I wanted to do. And I started Wrestling with Heart as a 7 episode series for my podcasting class. And I just really started enjoying it so much to the point where I said, I want this to be something. And I feel like I can make a difference with this. And here we are coming up on almost 2 years, and I'm in this for the long haul. My goal is to actually get syndicated on radio, and I just picked up my first affiliate earlier this summer on WDJY 99.1 FM in Dallas, Georgia, which is in the metro Atlanta area. So I'm hoping to in the near future get some more markets, and I'd like to get syndicated. So that's one of my goals with Wrestling with Heart.
That's amazing that you did get syndicated. Congratulations, on
Yeah.
that. Absolutely. And also, I love the motivation behind it because that's kind of like the motivation I have for my show, HWP. I wanted to talk about what I loved about wrestling because when I started my show, there was a crossroads happening where I saw um, the divide happening between WWE and between those fans that wanted an alternative. And then that's when AEW started to sprout. And with all of that beginning to blossom, I wanted to talk everything about what I loved about what I was seeing, as opposed to, just picking a side and being angry a lot of the time, like us wrestling fans tend to do. But that anger, of course, at the base of it is passion. And honestly, I just wanted to sort of center it towards that. So it seems like you and I kind of had the same motivation when it came to starting our shows. And I love that you center it on community service because not that many people, you know, center a lot of wrestling and community service together. Of course, you see those, well, we see them now, mostly now in more recent years where WWE would do community stuff. But as far as like when wrestlers or different personalities are on the come up, you don't see a lot of that either. So I think that that's an amazing thing that you decided to pull together. So for yourself, when did you learn sort of what the benefits of community service was? Like when did you find that out for yourself?
Oh man, like at a young age, like I would visit the homeless. I would make meals. I would send meals for the holidays through a group called 50 Forward here in the greater Nashville area. We would give meals over the Thanksgiving holidays and the Christmas holidays, and I would sing, with a group of people at nursing homes for the holidays. So that was something else I would do. Um, just learning it at such a young age, instills values, and I feel like the more we teach young kids about that, they'll grow up and do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to be selfless. And it's so interesting that you said about singing on the holidays. We used to do that in my high school. My
Hmm.
high school choir used to sing at nursing homes and stuff like that for holidays as well. And it does fill your heart with joy. And I know even in high school, they made it mandatory for you to have a certain amount of hours for community service so you can graduate.
Wow.
And
Okay.
yeah, and I'm so happy that they let us do that because there were so many ways you could do it, like with working with children to, giving stuff away, on Martin Luther King Day and serving the homeless in community kitchens. Like, because we have two of them in the Birmingham area. And so getting to participate in stuff like that, it really lets you know, um, it helps you feel like you're making a difference in the life of someone,
Hmm.
and it helps you appreciate, what you have in your life a little bit more. And it opens up a passion for other people that you also did not know that you could have until you do stuff like that. So it's an amazing experience. And and because I'm a crybaby, I cry a lot of the time after doing stuff like that because it's just like, it just, makes you feel really good inside and like you're actually helping others and that it's not all about you and what's going on in your world. Like, no.
Exactly. Hmm.
Mhm. Yes. So what have been some interesting stories that you've heard from certain wrestling personalities, and their work with the community?
Well, I had interviewed several people on the show. There was a girl who I had on about a year ago now, the Black Dahlia. She was just starting out. She was working with Funaki and Rikishi, had a buddy. They traveled together, worked together. And midway through her training, she broke her foot and she was living in her
Oh,
car and just came from this, really poor neighborhood, poor background. And not really, you know, didn't have the money to really get the help that she needed with her surgeries and just was not able to have the money to get her surgery, right away. So um, I, about a few years later, now she's finally starting to get, the help that she needs in her surgery, and she's looking to make a return to the ring. So hopefully, sooner than later, we'll start to see her back in the ring.
yeah, that sounds really insane to have to go through. I've interviewed, tons of wrestlers who've had to, fight through different obstacles and also fight through, injuries and stuff. But it's the bouncing back that really, you lifting yourself up after going through something like that, that really does, give you inspiration.
Mhm.
So I'm really happy that she shared that story with you and that she is finding her way um back. Now, I do want to ask you, has there ever been any obstacles that you have faced, as you've grown as a host that you were able to overcome yourself?
Well, learning how to do a podcast isn't always easy. I've had to really read about, how to do it because, learning technology at different stages, it's kind of hard because I'm trying to be as adept to so many of these platforms. So I going in, I'm like, okay, I got to create a Facebook page and Instagram and X and all these different accounts, setting these up. How am I going to get guests? Where do I find guests? I've had a mix of established names as well as some guys on the independent scene. I've had people reach out to me about being on the show, which is I'm very flattered because it's not always easy to get people to do the show. People are busy. They've got shows that they're on, and they're 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 not as accessible, sometimes. So you have to be able to really contact as many people as possible to be able to get them on. I try to book as many interviews as I can, get as many people on as I can. I'm very happy and blessed that I've been able to interview so many people. I've had on guys like Al Snow. He was my first guest that I ever interviewed. Stevie Ray of Harlem Heat, Victoria, Candice Michelle, the Blue Meanie. I just had Teddy Long on. Just who's who of people. Rico Constantino, if you remember Rico from back in the day, with Billy and Chuck. He and with Charlie Haas. I interviewed. I've interviewed so many people. Buff Bagwell is another one. Just I've had on a lot of people, and I plan on getting more people in the coming weeks and months, and hopefully into the years as well.
Yeah, like I can definitely attest to that. Like having guests was one of the most, I feel like when I started my show, um, it was one of the most scariest things I ever did because a part of me was just like, okay, so do you find these people and just message them or DM them or do you email them? Like there's a lot of learning on the job that you kind of have to do, or at least for me, because I didn't go to school for this at all. I just did it on a whim. So it was just kind of like how do you do stuff like that? But learning, on the whim was really fun for me because at least you know how to improve your game and really how to approach people like this in that way. And that was an obstacle that I had to get past
Yeah,
myself. So I
exactly.
get it. I get
Hmm.
it.
Yeah, you gotta be very. Another thing I've learned is being patient.
Absolutely.
Because I know that a lot of these people, like I said, they're busy with their own schedules. So I've had to really pace myself, email, try to email them or message them or however. And it's like, wait a few weeks, wait a few months. And it's like, some of them will come back around, some of them I'll have to try it again, but it'll all work out in the end, and hopefully it'll stay that way as we move forward.
Yeah, and a lot of it is also just having confidence that what you're building is definitely worthy of attracting people like that, whether they're from, the indies or people with more established names and stuff like that. So I definitely understand that, and I'm glad that you were able to push through that and still, rise above and do, and be able to have the guests that you've had, because you've had really great guests and stuff like that. Like I watched the interview you had with Kelly, and that was amazing. So, yeah, you're definitely on the right track. So, you're welcome. So, I do want to discuss everything that's been happening in wrestling as of late, because, of course, we're coming after a huge, huge wrestling weekend and week with SummerSlam and, everything that's happened afterward with the Raw and the NXT. Of course, SmackDown comes on tomorrow. So, how are you feeling about the state of wrestling now? Not even just with WWE, but just in wrestling as a whole?
Well, I think that the good thing about today's wrestling is that it's more accessible than it used to be. You can go not only watch it on television, but you can go online on YouTube or any streaming platform you want to see wrestling. You could watch it at your fingertips. WWE comes on 3 times a week, on cable and soon to be on Netflix. And then you've got your AEWs, which are on your TBSs, your TNTs. And then, of course, you've got your NWAs, your Impacts, your TNAs, New Japans. Uh, I mean, 20 years ago, that was unheard of. You only had maybe one or two companies on TV. If you're lucky, you'd get Ring of Honor on one of the smaller local stations. But now you could watch it on your computer or watch it on your phone. I think it's great. And now with the internet, with social media, I think more fans know more about the wrestlers, people that are coming up in the business, people that are going to be signing with a major company. So you're following these people in real time. Whereas maybe you had somebody debut from OVW on WWE television and they're like, who's that guy? Remember those days?
Mm-hmm.
Or here's something I missed. They don't do much anymore, but I think they should bring back the vignettes. Remember the vignettes that would come up of somebody coming in for the first time. I think that adds so much more intrigue to a character. They're like, people will want to know, hey, is this going to be a good guy or a bad guy? I can't wait to get behind this so and so debuting. I definitely think they should bring that back. But I'm like, I love today's product in terms of the storytelling and the athletics. I mean, you got so many great talents now. It's unbelievable. It's really great to see.
It is great to see. And I do love the accessibility of wrestling, because I can't tell you how much of a blessing YouTube was to me when I was in college myself. And I wasn't able to watch it, on the regular because I was just in the hustle of all my classes. And the accessibility of it now, really did help me, stay abreast as to what was going on. And then, of course, you had the network for WWE and how that definitely helped with, online things. So that is amazing. And then there's so much out there that every person can watch. There's wrestling for every person now, and it's not just one place. It's like so many different places flourishing in their own way. And it's just really beautiful how it's happening. So, Stanley, I do want to ask you, how did you feel about the events of SummerSlam, and what were some of your favorite matches and angles that you saw?
Oh man, I loved SummerSlam. I thought it was really well done, really put together. I think Punk versus McIntyre was probably one of my favorite matches. Just because of the story that they were telling. It's been brewing for so many months. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next because I kind of want to see a rematch between both guys. And I loved seeing Roman come back. The ovation he got from the crowd was amazing. It really was great. So Roman coming back was awesome. Um, the women's stuff was great too. Rhea and Liv tore the house down. Nia becoming champion was good. So all around it was really good. And then with Raw Monday night, this new Wyatt faction, the Wyatt Six, I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next, because I think that they could be a force to be reckoned with on the roster, on the show.
Yeah, like everything about this weekend was amazing for me as well. Like I really enjoyed Rhea and Liv and everything that happened afterward, which is just so dramatic. But oh my God, like even Drew and CM Punk, my favorite part of that match was just seeing how great CM Punk was able to adapt to someone like Drew McIntyre, and just seeing how he can very much still go, because a lot of the talk in the wrestling community is wondering if he can, sustain a run because of the injuries that he's faced in the past, which happens to a lot of people. But of course, it tends to happen a little bit more, the older you get. But at the same time, he's out here proving that no matter how old you get, you can still, put on an excellent match. And he definitely did that for sure. And I was so happy to see that.
It's surreal to see that Punk was able to make his return to the company after a decade away. And the fact that he was able to pull off a great showing at SummerSlam was tremendous. And I hope that he's able to main event WrestleMania next year, because I think that he deserves it for sure. Where'd she go? All right. We lost her. Let's see. Hopefully she'll come back on in a minute. All right.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was having technical difficulties.
That's fine.
Can
No
you hear
worries.
me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, I can't hear you now.
Uh-oh. What happened?
Oh,
What happened? Oh, you're muted. Oh. Yeah, turn it off mute. I think that would help. All right, there we go.
okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, I still can't hear you. I still can't hear you.
Oh. I don't know how that happened. I don't know. I don't know what happened here. Am I supposed to stop something, or you can't hear me at all? Okay.
Okay, guys. So as soon as we get our sound together, we will continue with the interview. I see a comment from the Jacqueline. I will get that on there as soon as possible. Okay, just for those who are watching, can you guys hear me right now? Can you guys hear me on the screen? Hello, testing. Okay. All right. So I know I'm on. So hopefully our guest will be back on. We are so sorry, guys.
All right.
Okay, we're back.
All right.
All right. So back to the question. What were you saying about CM Punk and his return?
Oh, I think he absolutely deserves to main event WrestleMania, as if he can keep up the momentum going, I think him and Seth Rollins would be a classic.
Yeah, it would be a classic. That was something going out of Survivor Series from last year that I did want because I was present, for CM Punk's return. It was like a surprise that has altered my brain chemistry. Just being there and witnessing that was just insane. And then way afterwards, seeing how Seth, responded, it was just kind of like, these two need to fight. And we now know because of the behind the curtain documentary that WWE did that Seth was supposed to fight CM Punk, but then the injury happened at the Royal Rumble and that just kind of put a dent in things. But the beautiful part about it is that knowing that there's that animosity still, we can things are in motion that maybe we might see that, maybe next year at some point. And if he does main event WrestleMania in Vegas, that would be well deserved. It would be well
Yes.
deserved. Oh my
Mhm.
God. It'll be so great. So in the chat, we have Najaquin, and he wanted to know who your favorite wrestler is, Stanley.
Yeah. So I'd say my favorite was The Rock growing up. Just like I said earlier, just very charismatic. His promo work was off the charts. Comedy. He had a lot of comedic chops, obviously, that translated into his acting career. Just was the total package. Can't get any better than The Rock.
Yeah, he's definitely my favorite as well as a male wrestler. How did you feel about his final boss iteration?
I mean, I warmed up to it. I liked it. I don't feel like it was fair that he got booed when it was Roman versus when it looked like it was Roman versus The Rock for WrestleMania. But again, I mean, it wasn't his fault. So the fans kind of turned him, but it was good. I kind of like the whole like hybrid like People's Champ and Hollywood Rock combination.
Hmm.
I like it. I'm curious to see where it goes from here because I don't know. I prefer The Rock being a baby face. I just prefer like at this point I can't boo him. I just can't boo him. I mean he's good as a heel. Don't get me wrong, but I can't dislike the guy.
Yeah, it's like you can't dislike The Rock. It's really hard because it's so funny that you mentioned how people were booing The Rock and that's how the final boss came to be. Because, it was the show that happened, the SmackDown that happened in Birmingham in February that
Mm-hmm.
set all of that into motion when it looked like Cody was giving up his main event spot for The Rock and Roman Reigns. And then that just sent everyone into a tailspin that whole weekend. And of course, Cody got his opportunity in the sun that he really should have gotten. But of course, it wasn't The Rock's fault per se.
No.
But, it's just like, it's really hard to boo him because even on that show, before we saw what was happening with Cody and Roman, we were cheering him because he had not been to Birmingham in years. He had
Mm-hmm.
not been to a SmackDown in Birmingham in years. So we were so excited and we were thrilled. And economically, it meant a lot to the city because he owns the UFL and our championship
Mm-hmm.
team now. So it was just a huge deal. So we were cheering him, and it's hard to not cheer him because you love him so much. But watching this final boss thing was hilarious, and just seeing all the, quotables he was making with Mama Rhodes and him beating up on Cody and everything. And there is still that underlying issue that he might have with Cody because he told him, "Don't break my heart again." So for all we know, they could have a little bit of fights in the future. You never know.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't see The Rock really retiring anytime soon. I know that Cena's going to be calling it a day next year, but I could see The Rock sticking around for a little bit, getting into it with Roman and Cody and anybody else that wants to take him on.
Oh my God, yeah, it's funny because I feel like in wrestling you're never truly retired. So he tried
No.
before and clearly it didn't work. Um, so I just can't wait to see what happens next. It's just been really amazing to see.
Yes.
So, what would you say the future holds for you, Stanley? Like, what other goals do you have, with your show and even just with your radio career as a whole?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, like I really aim to be, I've always talked about wanting to be a syndicated host. And through that, I would like to do that with Wrestling with Heart, really get it out there. Make the progress that we're doing now. We're on one station, so we want to get on more, trying to get on as many people as possible that want to come on. Like I mentioned, I've heard from several indie guys that want to do it, and try to get, the bigger names on as well. And then also I'd like to, we just reached 500 subscribers on YouTube. So we're trying to get up there. Thank you. So we're trying to get up there, get up to 600 and beyond. But I'd like to try to get a book or two written of my interviews. That's another goal of mine. I feel that the more people know about what we're doing, and in many ways as possible, I think would be great. I think a book showing and documenting the interviews that we've done with some of the people that have been on so far would be great. So I'm hoping to get that done within the next year or so.
That's beautiful. I could see a book like that at Barnes and Noble. Like that's my favorite bookstore. So it's just like I can definitely see a Wrestling with Heart book sitting on a shelf somewhere, and that would actually attract a lot of people to read, the community service work of wrestlers. So that would be amazing. I definitely see that for you. Well, Stanley, thank you so much for coming on
Yeah.
HWP. I'm
Thank you
so
so much.
happy. I'm so happy we were able to make this happen. So if you don't mind just telling everybody where they can find you and what you've got going on.
Yes. So we're on all the socials, or most of the socials. Facebook, type in Wrestling with Heart with Stanley Karr. We want to get the likes up. We just hit 2K followers, 2,000 followers, but we want to get those likes up to 900 and beyond. So Wrestling with Heart with Stanley Karr on Facebook. We're on X, formerly Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, at WWHWSK. We're on Instagram at Wrestling with Heart. We're on Threads at Wrestling with Heart. And as I mentioned before, we're on YouTube. Type in Wrestling with Heart with Stanley Karr. Hit that subscribe button, like the videos, like the content. And we're on wherever you get your podcasts. We're on as many platforms as we can right now. We're on Apple. We're on Spotify. We're on iHeart. And we're just on so many to count here. But find us wherever you get your podcasts. So your support means everything, and we appreciate it. So thank you again for having me, Stephanie.
Absolutely. And if you ever want to come back, just holler at me and we'll definitely have you back on.
Yes,
So,
please do. And November 30th, I will be at WrestleCade in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I was there last year, had a great time. Looking forward to coming back this year, and hoping to make some connections. If you want to come say hello.
absolutely. Go to WrestleCade. I heard it's fun. So of course, know that you can follow me, your girl Stephanie Hardy, on Instagram and Twitter/X at Queen Steph Hardy. And you can listen to the Hardy Wrestling Podcast everywhere you get your shows. This episode will more likely be up within the next few hours, audio wise. And you can go back and watch it on the YouTube channel. Please subscribe to the YouTube and continue to follow the Hardy Wrestling Podcast on Instagram at Hardy Wrestling Podcast and on Twitter at Hardy Wrestle Pod. So, of course, this has been the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl Stephanie and Stanley Karr of Wrestling with Heart. And until next time, bye, y'all.